Hey guys, having a great weekend still. Yesterday in my Saturday live, towards the end of it, I asked a question of everybody who was joined in there, joined in for the chat. Asked them to send me a message on Twitter, basically with what they would want me to make a video on, just so I can have a little inspiration, you know, something a little bit different, maybe something somebody has seen me use or do, and they're curious about how to do it themselves. Well, I got two responses from LockPicking's gal and also Chiral, and it was really easy to choose between the two of them because they were both the same. Everybody wanted to see how I made this guy right here, which I showed this yesterday in my live, but it's been in a few other videos. This is my little doorknob, door lock set testing rig. And the reason why I like to have it is it saves me from having to install and uninstall locks on my actual doors just for the purposes of testing how their installation goes, also how their pick resistance is when they're in situ, which of course is my favorite way to test pick resistance of locks. Put them in the environment and the position that they're meant to be in, and then we'll see how difficult it is to pick open. But they wanted to see how I made this guy. This is something I literally threw together out of some scrap wood and a couple of screws. Did this several months ago. In fact, it might have even been last year, but it's really rough and it has a few design issues. First is it's using a 2x4, and this was actually pressure treated 2x4, which you don't need for something like this. Also, pressure treated 2x4s are a little bit thick, so for more, I guess, more complex lock sets like the Schlage, AL series that I've looked at before and tested out before, they're kind of sensitive and tricky when it comes to getting them adjusted for the thickness of doors. Most of your cheap stuff like this Reliabuilt that we looked at yesterday doesn't really care about it as long as it's not more than about inch and 3/4 thick. That's about the maximum. Also with the 2x4, it's not 4 inches across. If this was 4 inches across, I would not have any issue, but it's not. 2x4s aren't 4 inches across. They're, just shy over 3 if you're lucky. So you can see here on the install, there's kind of an overhang, and this part of the wood right here is really, really thin, actually. Whenever you take the lock out, you can see where it's really thin through here, and I've never really cared for that. So anyway, I'm going to revise it a little bit. Set this guy aside, and we're going to look at what we're doing. First off is this morning, I went to Lowe's and I bought some materials, and I bought another 2x4 because they didn't have any 2x6 cut down into the project wood section, and I wasn't going to buy a full 8-foot board of 2x6 and then have them cut it down or me cut it down. I wasn't going to go through all that. That was expensive. This was like $2. Now, just to clarify, 2x4 will work. The only thing is you're going to have to be really careful when drilling out the main latch hole, the main bore for the latch and mechanism to go through, because you're going to get really, really close to the edge there, and that could lead it to break. Obviously, we're not going to be pounding away on these with sledgehammers or whatever, but still, it's good to have some meatiness to it. So I went ahead and I bought this, and I also bought some wood for a base, which I'll talk about here in a second. Came home and it wasn't what I wanted. And so anyway, I said, well, I'll make do, because some people might only have 2x4s, and that's fine if that's all you have. You can do it, you just got to be careful when you're drilling your holes. I got to looking around, over here on my shelves, I realized that I had some nice long shelves across the top that I never use because, quite honestly, I'm too short to reach them. And I got to looking, and they had supports in the middle, like this, 2x6. So you can see how much wider it is, and it's still about our same thickness that we need. Because, again, we don't want it to be too thick that our mechanisms won't fit through it. And then also the shelving material itself kind of looked a little bit better. This is some high-grade plywood. So we can party this up a little bit if we want to. But anyway, let me get the camera adjusted. But I'll finish real quick. The 2x4s, like I said, you can use this just fine. You want a 2x4 where you can get 2 equal length pieces. And I'll talk about the lengths here in a second, but you know, 2 equal length pieces. And then basically you're going to take one piece and mount it in the center of the other piece. And that vertical mount is where you're going to drill your hole and everything. And again, just be really careful because you will get really close to the edge to allow for that back set. And that's on the shallowest back set. So, you know, just be aware of that. But anyway, I'm going to set this stuff aside. We're going to use it for projects in the future. And I've already taken the liberty of running the power saw and cut down the base here. Like you can see, it's 10 inches. The 2x6 is also about 10 inches. So that seems to be a pretty good ratio as far as balance, size, and then also a comfortable height to work from when you got it on a bench. That brings it up to about nearly the same height as if you mounted it on a door. Not quite, and of course your mileage may vary. But what we're going to look at as far as this, I did go ahead and one edge of it was kind of boogered up. Like you can see maybe this edge here, how it's kind of checked down the side of it. Not real pretty. The other edge was decent, but it still had some of that. It wasn't completely square, and that won't really have that on what we're going to be doing with it. But I like to have a nice square edge because we are going to mortise out where the latch goes. So having a nice square edge for that, being able to mount that latch nicely is going to be nice. It's going to make it look nicer. Also, you want to make sure that your wood doesn't have too many knots in it. If there are knots, make sure that they're kind of, you know, like this one is down here towards the end. Obviously, this will be the bottom because we don't want to try to drill through that or chisel through it. That would just be asking for a mess. But I'll show you how to mark these out. And again, this is 10 inches, just the right height. And then what we're gonna do is just attach it to the base. But first, we need to mark out and drill our holes for our lock sets in here. I'm only gonna be putting in one. If you wanted to use a little bit longer board, maybe a couple inches longer, you could probably drill it out and get enough space for, say, a log set and a deadbolt, both in the same display. I don't really see the need for it with what I do, because if I want to test a deadbolt, I'll throw a deadbolt in there. If I want to test a lever set, I'll throw a lever set in there. So anyway, enough rambling, let me get the camera turned around and I'll show you what's next. All right, guys, so we've got our jig here, which this is the cheapest jig that you can buy at Lowe's, but it has the different bag sets for 2 3/8, which is the shallower, and 2 3/4, which will bring it back deeper. You know, I think 2 3/8 is fine. Of course, if you're using a 2x4 to do this with, then 2 3/8 is what you would have to use. My jig is all kinds of jacked up. So basically what I use it for is just to mark, just to get a starting point to where I can get everything centered up. And then I take this off and just go at it freehand. But the first thing I want to do is drill the holes here for where this attaches. So I'm going to drill a pilot hole, and we'll take a couple screws and put in there to secure it while we get the other holes started. I'm just using a couple of screws that came with that lock we looked at yesterday. And this will just hold the jig in place. Again, like I said, so we can get everything started. It'll actually also help later on when we mortise everything out. And I just want to check and make sure that everything seems even, which it does. So now we'll take that out. And we'll mount the center bit for the hole saw. Actually, I'm going to start with the hole saw for the latch, which is 1 inch. Hold it up this way, put it in the middle of the jig. Gives me a good starting reference for that when you finish it up, because you want to do that secondly. But again, I'm just marking places in here. And we're going to go until, I guess the jig's actually holding in place fairly well right now, but that was just enough really to get it started. So I'm going to go until the pilot bit starts poking out the back. Like that right there. You can see the bit starting to come out, so we're going to switch sides. And there we go. And then we've got this nice solid wood plug there, which may come in handy if you ever need to try to fill in where you've cut out for a lock before. There we go. There will be a little bit of sawdust with this project. Set that over there from now. And then we'll remove the jig. Okay. And you can see we don't have that much splitting on the inside. I'm going to take some sandpaper to that to smooth it out a little bit, clean this up. But you can see we've got basically our prep for the door. So our next step will be to mortise out for the latch plate that goes here. That way we can make a full installation on our test rig. And what I'm actually going to do is use this jig again. I took it off just a minute too soon, but all I'm going to do is use it to mark where the edges are, because it does have guides inside, and it actually came with a little template the jig did to put down on this once you got everything drilled, but I ain't gonna worry about that. And what we might actually do is just get a latch plate and put it in here so that we can get it marked up a little bit better. So here's a Schlage deadbolt latch. You can see it fits down in there pretty well. And what I'm going to do is center it again. Use our little screws that we used for the jig. And of course we are going to take this just right back out, but mark along the edges. And we'll wind up taking out a little bit more than what I marked, but that's okay, because it doesn't have to be perfect for this. Got our chisels out here, and we're just going to start by marking where we want everything to stop. Chisel. Actually, I'm going to stick with the 1 inch. Get more out. there now. It's not perfectly flush, but the biggest reason why you want to get it as flush as possible is so that when you install your lock, everything will be lined up and there won't be anything off center. So that's why we're going through this trouble of trying to get everything as it should be. Well, I think this gets us pretty much there. I'm going to go back through with my chisels and clean that up a bit, and then we'll be on to mount the base. All right, guys, so you can see I've finished out the mortise for the latch. I might need to go back and in the future, if I find something that doesn't quite fit in there, you can always adjust that mortise just like you do on a real door. But I also took some sandpaper, smoothed up the inside and the edges just a little bit here. So now what I did after that was I took the base plate, and you can see I found the center of the board, and then I measured out the thickness of the board in each direction. And then I measured in by 1 inch because that's where I'm going to put the little mounts that I have, which are these guys right here. I figured I'd try something a little bit different. But I am also going to use 2 long screws through the bottom just to help secure it a little bit more. And actually this is going to be the bottom of the base plate. Or actually this could be the top, I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. Doesn't have to be pretty. Again, make it how you want to. If you just want to eyeball this, then that's fine. But I recommend getting this part as close to the center as possible, because that's going to help your balance, and whenever you're using it, it's going to make it not wobbly. It's going to make it more stable on your bench. So alrighty, so here we go. I used a couple of these right here. If I really wanted to, I could go in and drill in a couple screws from the bottom. But what's it missing? Of course it's missing a lock. So let's get one. All right, folks, and here we have it. Finally completed. I've got a Schlage A-series knob in here. And even unlock it. So, I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you again to LockPicking Gal and Chiral for requesting this video. I was happy to do it. It's a fun project. I've been looking forward to making another jig like this to be able to test locks a little bit better. So anyway, appreciate it, and hope y'all will tune in again next time.